Hi, guys. It's Shirley Jump with Writing Compelling Fiction. I have written 85 books that have been published in 24 countries. And I'm telling you to brag. I'm telling you because I know what it's like to be stuck in the middle of a book. I've had it happen way more than once. And I figured out what the number one problem is for people who get stuck in their books. Now, let's back up a little bit and talk about what it means to be stuck. For a lot of writers, they get to a certain chapter. Maybe it's chapter 3 or 5 or 9, or if you're writing a really big book, maybe it's about halfway through. They're writing, everything is great, and you have that honeymoon phase of the first few chapters where everything is fantastic, right? Like, I love that part of a book when it's new and anything can happen and it's gonna be the best book ever. And then you get towards the middle, and that's when things start to change. And if you're kind of a pantser, I'm a little bit of a pantser, a little bit of a plotter, which means I write a little bit from my gut and a little bit from a plan. um, Sometimes that can be a point where you're just like, I'm lost. I don't know what to do next. Because if you haven't planned the whole book out, then you don't necessarily have a logical step to go to for the next scene. Even if you have planned the whole book out, it can also happen where you get stuck because you haven't figured out the right elements of the plot. So if you're stuck, which means you're not sure what to write next, or the book just seems to be treading water, literally, you're there working on the same pages over and over and over again. And every time you try to write forward, it just doesn't feel right. So you delete, 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 you just write forward, delete, delete, delete. If this pattern is happening to you, then chances are good that it's a plot problem. Now, a lot of you will probably say, I have a great plot. I know that the little girl's going to get kidnapped and the dad is going to go rescue her and he's going to go up against these bad guys. And yeah, you probably do have a great external plot. Most of us do. The first plot that you come up with is generally the external. The external plot is all of those tangible physical things, the thing that the character wants to go after, his goal. Maybe it's getting a loan from the bank to save the family farm, or maybe it's rescue the little girl, or maybe it's I don't know, s- you bring about world peace before the end of the world on some countdown clock thing. Whatever that storyline is, that's your external plot. Where most writers fall apart and where they get it wrong and where it gets stuck is with the internal plot. So I've done some other videos a little bit on character, and I wanted to get into that a little bit deeper today. So the internal plot is the emotional journey. And it's not just about your character learning to care for other people or be open and vulnerable. There are a lot of things that got your character to where they are today. I had you do an exercise a week or so ago that talked about the 10 pivotal moments in your character. All of these little exercises that I do are all feeding into the bigger goal of what I'm going to be telling you in the weeks to come. Just like all of the scenes in your book feed into the bigger goal of your character for the whole book. But the 10 pivotal moments are the things that shape the character emotionally and mentally. They're what carves out the character and their reactions to things. So if you come up with those, or you come up with a background for your character, and not just background, but the impact, we talked about that in another video previously. When you come up with the impact on your character, you come up with their emotional journey. Their emotional journey is all about the inner wounds and insecurities and doubts that they have. We all have those. You've got to give your character plenty of them. Those doubts and wounds and insecurity affect how they interpret things, how they react to things, and what decisions they make. So, somebody who doesn't trust other people maybe will go off on an adventure by himself or herself and then get into trouble and get hurt. If you look at, say, John McClane in Die Hard, that guy is a cowboy who goes off on his own. And why is that? Because he's an alcoholic who has bad relationships and destroys the relationships with everybody around him. The whole reason John McClane is trying to rescue his soon to be ex-wife from the top of a building on Christmas time is because of his inner issues, his inner demons that make him drink and make him avoid talking about the hard stuff. And that has led him to where he's hungover and trying to battle a bad guy who really, really hates him. And he doesn't really have anybody from the squad that wants to back him up at first because he's been a terrible person to them. So if you look even at a really mainly external movie like Die Hard, you can see that internal at work in there. Internal component is what gets the engine running and it's what raises the stakes, increases the tension in the book. So if you're stuck, I want you to go back to the beginning and figure out your character's internal emotional journey. Like, what do they need to learn to do by the end of the book? Why did they need to learn how to do it? And what is standing in their way? If it's like John McClane learning to be vulnerable and open, then that the motivation is to save lives. And the conflict is every time he's open, he gets hurt emotionally. So once he learns to actually be a little bit more open and vulnerable, which comes at the very end of the movie because it is a guy movie, not a girl movie, he gets the girl and everybody's saved and all is good. So look at your character, go back and figure out what is going on with them internally and emotionally. We're going to keep getting into this whole thing because the internal part is a really big part of the book. So don't worry about getting it all in this particular video. That doesn't happen. You don't learn how to play basketball for the NBA in one session of hoops in the backyard. So keep coming back and keep watching the other videos. And if you are struggling with a concept, I encourage you to ask a question in the comments because I would love to address that in a future video. I hope that helps you get out of the place where you're stuck and get moving forward again on your plot. And be sure to watch the Friday step by step videos because that's where I'm going to be talking about building a book from the ground up.